Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the life of a true American icon today, Henry Ford.
A man who went from a farm in the 1800s to building, well, an empire, basically. A company worth billions.
Yeah, a real rags to riches story. And it all started on a farm, right? I mean, Dearborn, Michigan. Not exactly the birthplace you'd expect for a titan of industry.
You'd think a farm in the 1800s would kind of set you on a certain path. But Ford was different. Didn't really fit the mold.
You know, I read somewhere that he said something like, I never had any particular love for the farm. But then he added, it was the mother on the farm I loved. So even as a kid, sounds like his heart was somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Even as a young boy, he was fascinated by mechanics, taking things apart, just obsessed with figuring out how things worked, like classic tinkerer.
And that's not just a story, right? It's not just like, oh, every kid likes to play with gadgets. This was like next level. Like when he was 12, he got a pocket watch as a gift.
Oh, yeah, the pocket watch story. Pretty much took it apart right away, but then he started fixing watches.
For like the whole neighborhood.
Pretty much. I mean, imagine that, 12 years old, running a little watch repair business.
Yeah, that's some serious entrepreneurial spirit right there. From a farm boy to a watch repair whiz.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's that drive that, led him to make a pretty big decision. At 16, he leaves the farm, heads for Detroit.
1879 that was. Cars weren't exactly, a common sight back then. So to travel all that way looking for work must have been quite a journey.
It was. But Detroit was booming, becoming a hub for industry, especially manufacturing. The perfect place for someone like Ford with ambitions.
So he's not just chasing some vague dream. He's putting himself right in the center of the action. What did he do once he got to Detroit?
He didn't waste any time. He worked several jobs. Always learning more about mechanics. Started at the Michigan Car Company Works, then an apprenticeship at a machine shop. And to keep the lights on, kept fixing those watches at night.
Talk about dedication, huh? Clearly, he wasn't afraid of hard work. And then, in 1882, this is where things get really interesting. He has this, I guess you could call it a fateful encounter with a new invention.
Yeah, the gas engine enters the scene. Ford comes across this British magazine, features an engine designed by Nicholas Otto, German engineer. This gas engine was way more efficient than those bulky steam engines everyone was using.
It's funny, right? One magazine article and bam, a whole new obsession is born. What was it about the gas engine that just captivated him?
I mean, this engine was a total game changer. Internal combustion made it faster, lighter. Steam engines, they took forever to warm up. This gas engine was ready to go instantly. Ford knew this technology was, it was the future.
So what did he do? Just start building gas engines right away?
Well, he knew he needed to learn more. Got a job as a night engineer. Edison Illuminating Company, the biggest electric company in Detroit. His job. Keep the steam engines running, which he did. But, when things were running smoothly...
It was tinkering.
Exactly. Use that time to learn about electricity. He knew electricity was the key to, igniting the gas engine.
So clever, right? Getting paid to learn while keeping the lights on for the whole city. So steam engines by day, electricity by night, all the while he's got this gas engine on the brain. Where does he go from there?
All that hard work pays off. 1893... builds his first working gas engine. It's a real turning point, the foundation for, his lifelong pursuit of building a horseless carriage, as they called it back then.
Okay, so he's got his engine. Now he needs to build a car around it, right? Just start a company and get to work.
Oh, it wasn't quite that simple. I mean, Ford was an innovator, sure. But his early ventures, let's just say there was some learning experiences along the way.
Yeah.
Some bumps in the road.
Oh, really? So not all smooth sailing for Henry Ford. What happened with his first attempts at starting a car company?
Ford's first company. He actually got fired.
Wait, fired? From his own company?
Yeah, wild, right? But it shows a lot about how he approached things. He was obsessed with tinkering.
Yeah.
Constantly improving designs, which, it led to delays. Big time.
So the classic innovator versus business dilemma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was so focused on making each car perfect, he didn't quite grasp the whole satisfying investors part of the equation, meeting demand, the business side of things.
So valuable lesson learned there.
Big time. He realized controlling the supply chain, super important. Relying on multiple suppliers for parts, that was causing major bottlenecks. And he realized to really succeed, he needed to cater to the masses. Not just a few wealthy folks who wanted custom-made cars.
So even though this first company, it flops, he doesn't give up on the dream. What's next for Henry?
He shifts gears, focuses on racing cars.
Smart move.
Right, racing was huge back then. and let him show off his engines, how powerful, how reliable they were.
So he knew how to market his ideas, generate that buzz, attract those investors. Pretty savvy.
Oh yeah, understood publicity. And you know what? It worked. 1901, designs a race car, beats Alexander Winton, top race car driver in America at the time. Big win, put Ford on the map. Gave him that credibility he needed to launch his second company.
Round 2, things go a little smoother this time.
Not really. Investors in his second company, the Henry Ford Company, they still wanted those passenger cars, not race cars. So they bring in this other engineer, Henry Leland, to focus on production. Ford felt pushed aside, so he leaves. 1902.
Walks away from his own company? Again. Wow, he must have been really determined to do things his way.
He wanted control over his designs, his vision. And this time, leaving might have been the best thing. Leland went on to create the Cadillac. Ford was free to chart his own course.
Interesting how things work out, right? So what's next? Back to race cars.
Yep, builds another one. The Ford 999 broke all kinds of speed records in 1902, solidified his reputation, the top race car designer in America. And this success, this gave him what he needed to finally launch his third company, the one we all know, Ford Motor Company.
This is it. Everything changes now, right? What was different about this company?
1903, 11 investors, including this guy, Alexander Malcolmson, backed him. Ford establishes his company, clear mission, build affordable cars for everyone.
This is really what sets him apart, right?
Yeah.
Making cars accessible to everyone.
Exactly. He wanted to put America on wheels, not just the wealthy. I mean, he actually said, I will build a motor car for the great multitude.
Yeah.
So low in price that no man making a good salary will be unable to own one.
Powerful stuff. And this leads to, well, the Model T, right? The car that changed, well, everything.
Yeah, but there were a few models before the T. The Model A, the Model N Ford was always experimenting, refining his design.
Oh, always stink right.
And all those experiments, they led to something huge, one of the biggest innovations in manufacturing history. The assembly line.
It's crazy to think the idea came from something totally different.
Right.
Wasn't it a slaughterhouse?
You got it.
Okay.
He was at a slaughterhouse, saw how they moved carcasses along a conveyor belt, each worker doing one specific task, and it hit him. This could revolutionize car manufacturing, make it faster, more efficient, way more affordable.
It's like he could see things others couldn't, the possibilities, the patterns. So how did he, actually implement the assembly line at Ford?
1910. He builds this massive factory, Highland Park, Michigan, specifically designed for assembly line production.
This wasn't just any factory, right? This was like the birth of modern manufacturing.
Totally. Before, skilled workers assembled an entire car. Took a long time. Ford's system, it broke down the process. Simple, repetitive tasks.
So instead of one person building a whole car, you've got multiple people, each doing one specific job, over and over.
Exactly. The car's chassis, it moves along the belt. Each worker adds their part as it passes by. Before the assembly line, it took about 12 hours to build a Model T. With the assembly line, 90 minutes.
Wow, 90 minutes. No wonder the Model T became so popular, so affordable.
By 1914, Ford was producing more cars than all the other companies combined. The Model T, it became an icon, a symbol of, American progress.
But this system, wasn't there a downside? I mean, all that repetitive work must have been pretty boring. Didn't workers get dissatisfied?
Yeah, good point. A lot of workers, especially the ones who were used to being skilled craftsmen, they found it monotonous. High absenteeism, lots of turnover. Ford knew he had to do something.
And his solution, well, it's pretty radical for the time. He decides to pay his workers more than any other company.
1914, more than doubled wages. $5 a day, unheard of.
I mean, that was a fortune back then. What was the reaction?
Other companies thought he was crazy, predicted it would bankrupt him. But Ford, he had a different view. He figured pay workers well, they'll be more loyal, less turnover, and boost the economy overall.
Win-win situation. Happy workers, more productivity, thriving business.
Revolutionary. It forced other companies to raise their wages too, just to compete for workers. Ford's decision, it had a huge ripple effect. The whole manufacturing world changed labor relations, changed the American economy.
It's amazing how one decision can change everything, right? So at this point, Ford's on top of the world. He's built this amazing company. The Model T is a smash hit. Workers are getting paid well. It seems like nothing can stop him. What happens next? Does he just keep on riding this wave of success?
Well, as we'll see in the last part of our dive, even the most brilliant innovators, they face challenges. Ford's belief in the Model T, the very thing that made him a success, it would eventually become his biggest obstacle.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Let's dive into the later years of Henry Ford's life. see how he handled the ever-changing world of cars. Okay, so we've seen how Henry Ford went from farm boy to, well, automotive legend. But every story has its ups and downs, right? What happened after all that success with the Model T?
It's kind of funny, right? Yeah. Sometimes success, it can make you, I don't know, maybe a little blind to what's changing around you. Ford was so sure the Model T was perfect, he resisted change for way too long.
He couldn't see past the car that had made him, well, Henry Ford.
Yeah, pretty much. He even said once, any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants so long as it's black. Like, he just didn't see the need for options, different styles.
Yeah.
Even when his own son, Edsel, urged him to, try new things, innovate.
So while Ford's focused on efficiency, on mass production, the market's changing, right? What were other car companies doing?
Companies like Chevrolet, they were giving people choices. Different colors, sleeker designs, features that appealed to, well, a wider range of customers. And by the late 1920s, Ford's sales, they were dropping big time.
So he couldn't ignore the competition forever. Did he finally cave and create a new model?
He did, eventually. 1927, finally stops production of the Model T, introduces the Model A, a more modern car, updated features.
Yeah.
And yeah, it came in colors other than black.
Must have been a tough pill to swallow, admitting that the Model T's time had passed.
It was. To make the Model A, he built an even bigger factory along the Rouge River in Michigan. This was a truly massive facility, incorporated every single step of making a car, raw materials to finished product, all in one place.
So still innovating on the production side of things, but were there other challenges?
As the company got bigger, Ford's management style, it became an issue. He had to be in control. Always. Which, it worked okay in the early days, but as things got more complex...
His way or the highway kind of approach wasn't working so well.
Exactly. Slow to adapt, didn't take input from others easily. By the mid-1930s, Ford Motor Company, they'd fallen to third place, behind General Motors and Chrysler.
Even with the Model A, with the revolutionary V8 engine.
The car industry, it was way more competitive now. And Ford's, reluctance to change, that top-down management, it was holding the company back.
And then the Great Depression hits. That must have been rough for everyone, the whole industry.
Devastating. Ford had to lay off workers, cut wages. Talk about a painful turnaround from his earlier policies. And then in 1943, his son Edsel, he dies, stomach cancer. It was a huge loss for Ford personally and for the company. Edsel had been pushing for modernization.
Wow, what a difficult time. What happened to the company after that?
In 1945, Ford, he's 82 years old, hands control over to his grandson, Henry Ford II. He retires to his estate in Dearborn, dies 2 years later.
Back where it all began, kind of a full circle moment.
It is. Henry Ford's story, it's complicated, full of contradictions. A genius innovator, made cars affordable for millions, but also stubborn, resistant to change. And in the end, that cost him.
It's a reminder that even the most successful people, they have their flaws, they make mistakes. So what stands out to you most about Ford's legacy?
I think it's the impact he had on America. The assembly line, it didn't just change manufacturing, it helped create a new middle class. Workers could afford to buy the cars they were making. It led to more personal transportation, more freedom, more mobility. It changed everything.
Changes we still feel today. We still drive cars, we still work in factories that, use those assembly lines, and we're still dealing with automation, how it impacts jobs.
Ford's story reminds us that innovation, it's powerful. But we got to think about those long-term consequences.
Yeah.
And be ready to adapt, because the world, it never stops changing.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from Ford's early days tinkering with watches to his rise as a giant of industry. What parts of his story resonated with you? How are his innovations still shaping the world? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.